Attention all personnel. Attention all personnel. Clear the test stand area. Clear the test stand area. T-minus 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, ignition.
Welcome to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center here in Huntsville, Alabama, where I'm still reporting on the economy. Last month, President Obama killed the next generation of the American manned space program known as the Constellation program. Unfortunately, this was not what he promised to win election.
One of the areas where we're in danger of losing our competitive edge is in science and technology. And nothing symbolizes that more than our space program.
The Constellation program would have been the successor to the space shuttle, which is now scheduled for retirement this September. President Obama has decided that the NASA budget is better spent at proving that global warming is real. So although the NASA budget actually increases a little bit, all of that money is turned towards Earth science experiments. Rumors are that in April, the President will announce new robotic missions, but our manned space program will end, and so will American leadership in the last frontier.
When I was growing up, NASA inspired the world.
If the new Obama plan holds, America will be dependent for its heavy launch vehicles on Russia and China.
NASA's had to cut back on research, trim their program, which means that after the space shuttle shuts down in 2010, we're going to have to rely on Russian spacecrafts.
The tragedy of all this is the entire space shuttle program could be extended for a grand total of $1 billion per year. And the Constellation program kept on track for only an additional $2 billion per year. This would prevent mass layoffs from the Kennedy Space Center of some of the most highly trained scientists and engineers in the world. Once these folks are gone, their expertise will be dispersed forever, and America will never regain the high ground of space again. You can't just restart a leading-edge program like our manned space program overnight.
By speeding the development of the shuttle's successor, by making sure that all those who work in the space industry in Florida do not lose their jobs when the shuttle is retired.
Now, let's put this in perspective, because the amount of money NASA needs to keep the program going is small in comparison with the other money we're just giving away for nothing. This fiscal year, America will spend $700 billion paying interest on its debt, mostly to big banks. This expenditure is entirely unnecessary and due solely to the fact that these big banks were given a monopoly on creating America's money back in 1913 with the passage of the Federal Reserve Act. Last week, the Detroit News reported that taxpayers could lose $34 billion on auto bailouts alone. A little over a year ago, we bailed out the big New York banks to the tune of $250 billion. $20 billion to Bank America, $25 billion to Citigroup, $25 billion to J.P. Morgan, $25 billion to Wells Fargo, $10 billion to Goldman Sachs, $10 billion to Morgan Stanley, and even $5 billion to Merrill Lynch. On top of that, we gave insurance giant AIG $182 billion to be sure that they were able to repay what they owed to Goldman Sachs. But it doesn't stop there. According to this week's Wall Street Journal, the government is now subsidizing the sale of something called Build America bonds. These bonds are sold to struggling cities across the nation to help keep them solvent. Some cities are spending money like there is no tomorrow. Evansville, Indiana just financed a $127 million sports stadium thanks to the new bonds. Of course, this is a temporary fix, and the cost is extremely high. And once again, the biggest bankers are the long-term beneficiaries. By the end of this year, nearly $5 trillion worth of these bonds will have been sold to further indebt cities and states. The profit margin for big banks selling these bonds has been raised from the traditional $5 to $6 per thousand up to $8.20 per thousand. So, how much money is $8.20 per thousand on $5 trillion worth of bonds? It's about $40 billion. It's not surprising that Goldman Sachs, a major Build America bond issuer, has taken out advertisements urging Congress to expand the program and even make it permanent. Because all of these numbers make your head spin, this story never makes the evening news. The sad truth is that all of this state and municipal borrowing is completely unnecessary. If states were to follow the Bank of North Dakota model, which has been in completely successful operation for 90 years, they could underwrite their own municipal bonds at zero interest. All that state money can be kept in the state. Why don't they do that? That would cut the big New York money setter banks out of their risk-free investments, wouldn't it? Of course, the federal government could do exactly the same thing, underwrite their own borrowing for zero interest. Of course, the true fix is to outlaw government borrowing altogether. This would make politicians pay for their spending decisions immediately, instead of kicking the can down the road through a variety of machinations so complex that the average person can't follow it and loses interest. Again this year, the cost to we the taxpayers of all this federal borrowing will be about $700 billion. And yet, the administration will not provide an additional $1 billion to keep the manned spaceflight program of NASA alive. I say give the NASA manned spaceflight program as much money as it needs. For example, if just a 10% tax was levied on bank profits just from the sale of the Build America bonds, that would provide all the money NASA would need.
That's why I'm going to close the gap, ensure that our space program doesn't suffer when the shuttle goes out of service. We may extend an additional shuttle launch.
The NASA manned spaceflight program has been the leading edge, the most visible part of American exceptionalism. It is the most visible proof that the American experiment in incentive-driven capitalism works. Of course, it's not working. The problem is that America is being driven into decline by mountains of unnecessary debt because the big money setter banks have a monopoly on our debt money system. And this monopoly allows them to buy the necessary influence in Congress to maintain their system. According to Congressman Frank Wolf, the ranking Republican on the subcommittee that oversees NASA spending, the administration's fiscal year 2011 budget proposal all but abdicates U.S. leadership in exploration and manned spaceflight at a time when other countries such as China are turning to space programs to drive innovation and promote economic growth. Earlier this week, China Daily reported that China is now accelerating its manned spaceflight development while the U.S. cuts back. According to Bao Weiman with the Chinese Academy of Sciences, a moon landing program is very necessary because it could drive the country's scientific and technological development. In reality, a moon landing by China would signal to the rest of the world that China is now the leading nation on Earth and America has been defeated by the big bankers' debt money system. I'm still reporting from the U.S. Space and Rocket Center here in Huntsville, Alabama. Good day.